This conference will now be recorded.
Hi, y'all. Welcome to the October meeting. Call the meeting to order. And the first thing on the agenda is the approval of the minutes from the previous board meeting. They've been circulated. Does anyone have any questions or comments or a motion?
I move to approve the minutes of the board manager's regular meeting held on September the 8th as drafted.
All in favor?
Aye.
Great. Okay, the next thing on the agenda is the treasurer's report. It's going to be short because they're not here. And there's no changes from the written report that you got. So unless you have any questions, you can wait to hear from Gary in person next month. Anybody have any questions, comments? Okay, so the next thing on the agenda is the Friendship Heights Sector Plan Rewrite presentation. And we want to welcome you all. Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you for having us.
Great.
I'll start by introducing myself. My name is Larissa Clevin. I'm the Master Plan Supervisor for West County, which is the geography in which the plan falls. I'd also like to introduce my colleagues. So thank you again for having us. Tonight, I'm going to give a brief update on where we are in the master plan process and a little bit of background and the work that we've been doing. And we're excited. Oh, I'm sorry. One more. Perfect. We're going to go through a little bit about what the sector plan is, the progress that we've made, the different types of engagement that we've been doing, and especially the Chevy Chase Village questionnaire, as well as our next steps. Please. So I know that a lot of you know this information, but we always have someone new in the room. So I want to start by just doing a little bit of review on what a sector plan is. So at Montgomery County, a sector plan is a type of master plan. It looks at a long-term vision for a defined geographic area, in particular, usually one that's adjacent to transit or an urbanizing area, and it addresses all sorts of issues ranging from land use, zoning, transportation, housing, parks, anything that really relates to the physical development of an area. So tonight we are talking about the Friendship Heights Sector Plan. The boundary is up on the screen. It includes the village of Friendship Heights, as well as some of the Brookdale neighborhood. And while a large majority of Chevy Village is not within the boundary itself, which is where we'll make direct recommendations, a stakeholder for us is a very broad definition. If you live, visit, work, play, and any other verb within the plan area, you are a stakeholder for us. We're interested not only in what's happening in that area, but how people are getting to it and interacting with it, and making sure that we're looking at the larger context as well. So where are we in the sector plan process? The sector plan process itself is a multi-year process that involves a lot of steps, a lot of community engagement, a lot of iterative processes. Right now, we are wrapping up the visioning stage, where we work with all of the different stakeholders and constituencies to look to the future and really develop that long-term vision. We are moving into the analysis phase, which involves a little bit more of our staff work and really reflecting and going through all of those comments and feedback that we received during visioning in order for us to deliver preliminary recommendations, which are really that big ideas kind of framing for the plan that we're hoping to come back with in the new year. While we are wrapping up kind of this big engagement part of the plan, if you have not, emailed us or gotten in touch, but you want to, there's still time. Please email us or call us, or, there's ways on our website to get in touch, and our contact information, I'll put it up at the end of the presentation. But throughout this entire process, we are ready and able and willing to hear and discuss and receive feedback. The plan schedule, as I noted, we're in the visioning stage, which will take us through this fall, and we'll begin working on the plan development with ideally a final draft looking at the spring or summer of next year. There are a couple of steps in between there, which involve the opportunity for public comment. But really, what we're doing now is taking all of that feedback that we've received in so that our plan, accurately reflects the information that we've received. One more, please. So sector plan engagement for us is something that we take extremely seriously. We work very hard to reach out to a wide variety of stakeholders. As I mentioned, it's not just those who live within the plan area, but we really try to have a much broader definition of stakeholder. And we want to make sure that as we talk about the plan, we're clear, we're helping people understand both, the ideas within the plan, but the process itself, and providing a lot of opportunities so that people of all stages and ages can participate. Additionally, we really work very hard to kind of meet people where they are, meaning I'm happy to be here tonight and, we can come back if necessary. We really try to leverage working with our partners. If there's an event that's happening, we'll be there. If there's an established community meeting, we'll be there. We want to make it as easy as possible for people to give us feedback and to work with us. So, as part of that outreach effort, we have talked to a lot of people since we started this process in September of 2024. I know that some of the text on there might be a little bit small, but it's a mix of different neighborhood groups, different condo associations, different county organizations. And we really try and spread our net wide and work with as many as individuals as would like to work with us. As part of the plan progress, I want to just take a moment and go through a little bit of where we are to date. So one of the first things that we did is our existing conditions analysis. We can't know where we're going if we don't know where we are. So figuring out all of the kind of baseline, like demographics and statistics, looking at what kind of housing is here now, historic resources, all of these elements you'll see reflected in the plan, as well as kind of looking at them, how they are individually important, but also how they relate to one another. So as I said, right now we are in the visioning stage. We are wrapping it up. We have been working with a variety of stakeholders to receive feedback in a variety of different formats. We've had workshops and focus groups, and there were questionnaires. And I want to highlight for a second. So we had a meeting. We had our public workshop on September 30th at the Wisconsin Place Community Recreation Center. And we know that that date and time doesn't always work for everyone. So I wanted to make sure that I highlighted the online visioning work that we are doing now. It closes on Friday. You have plenty of time still to go look at it. And it mirrors the types of questions that we asked at the public meeting. And I'll get into that in a second. So in June, as part of visioning, we held workshops. We did one online as well as in person. I'll just note all of our meetings have been held for this plan in the Wisconsin Place Community Recreation Center, as well as an online component. And in June, sorry, back. Can you go back one? Thank you. In June, we focused on what do people want to see in Friendship Heights in the next 20 years? What should it look like? What kind of identity should it have? Looking at park amenities, as well as the pedestrian network, and a particular focus on Wisconsin Avenue. So over the summer, we have continued with a variety of engagement formats and topics. We held a couple of focus groups with business owners, renters, and parents of young children. Sometimes these groups can be a little bit more challenging for us to reach out and connect with. We wanted to put that extra effort into making sure that we heard from them. Heard some great feedback, things about parking and wayfinding and kind of the arrival at the metro. We heard a lot about affordability of both wanting to be able to stay in the community, but also be able to move into it, looking at business owners who are concerned about whether or not their employees can live nearby and whether that's sustainable or not. as well as some interest in looking at kind of activities that are geared for a variety of age groups and making sure that there are things for people at all stages of their life to enjoy. As you know, we did 3 questionnaires. We had one that was sent out to everyone who, no worries, anyone who wanted to answer. And we also particularly sent one to Chevy Village, and I would like to thank Sandra for sending it out and helping us spread the word, as well as one to the town of Somerset. We really wanted to get an idea of how people are interacting with the plan area. And I'll get back specifically to the questions that we dealt with Chevy Chase Village in 1 second. The fall workshop that I mentioned that was on September 30th, that is mirrored in the online visioning. We've talked about how sector plans are implemented. How do the plans and the recommendations that we make then translate into shaping development? And how do we get amenities in the community? How do they happen in different areas of the county? And what are those processes? And then we looked at 3 specific sites within Friendship Heights so that we could have specific discussions about what the future of those sites could look like and get some really specific feedback on what people saw. I want to encourage you to please check out the online visioning. It's helpful. I also highly recommend that you watch the video that is with it. It gives you a lot of context for when you're looking at the questions, and it's the presentation that we gave at our meeting on the 30th. So I want to make sure, just to let you know, you'll have all the information that everyone else had going into that. Next, please. So the Chevy Chase Village questionnaire in particular, we really wanted to get an idea of how people in adjacent neighborhoods are engaging with Friendship Heights. Now, we had 54 respondents, and I want to just caveat that the results clearly represent the respondents, but I also know that they don't represent everyone who lives in Chevy Chase Village. And just to reiterate that if you want to continue to share comments or feedback with us, you still have time, please do that. Of the 54 recipients that we had, 70% had heard of the sector plan before, and some of them had also previously participated in an engagement activity of some form that we had. We also heard from a lot of people, 80% of those who responded, that they weren't super interested in the plan process right now. So I'm hoping that as we continue to move through the plan process and as we continue our engagement, that that number continues, I guess that number in particular continues to shrink, so that we have additional participation by residents of the village. And just to go a little bit into the specific questions and the responses that we got, obviously, as you know, village residents are visiting often. They're going into Friendship Heights for Whole Foods, the doctor's office, and they're going in at least once a week, as reported by the responses that we got. Next, please. And then we also looked about when you go to Friendship Heights, how are you getting there? Sometimes something that looks super close on a map is not exactly right around the corner, or sometimes you have to traverse a little bit. So we're finding that lots of individuals are walking from here into Friendship Heights and using the Belmont Buffer Park Connector. So we really appreciate everyone who took the time to fill out the survey. I know that I will sound like a broken record, but if you have additional comments and you want to talk to us, please let us know. We are happy to have additional conversations, to receive additional feedback. And next, please. For our next steps, as I mentioned, we are wrapping up that visioning, and we are preparing to release a report that summarizes all of the visioning activities that we've done. So ranging from those June workshops, including the focus groups and our event on the 30th and everything we've collected online, and all of those materials we'll be releasing to everybody so that they can have a more in-depth understanding of the feedback that we got. And we will be presenting that to the planning board as well as to the community. I don't have dates for those right now, but I hope that many of you are signed up on our e-letter list. That's really the main way that we are sharing direct information with individuals. Do not flood your email box. We really want to focus that on important key milestones and updates and news. So when those dates are finalized, we will be sharing them in a variety of different avenues, and we hope that you will check that out. Following the wrapping up of visioning, we will move into preliminary recommendations, and we hope to be looking at that in the new year. And just to wrap up, with my contact information, Atara Margulies, who is the plan lead, she apologizes that she could not be here tonight, but feel free to be in touch with either of us. As I mentioned, we have an e-letter, which is the best and easiest way to get updates on the plan. And the QR code that is on the right will take you directly to the plan website, and you can't miss the online visioning. There's a big blue box at the top. And that is our update for tonight, and I'm happy to answer any questions that anyone may have.
Do you get the sense that some of Friendship Heights is working better than other parts of Friendship Heights? Like, it looks like everybody goes to Whole Foods. So is the part that has Whole Foods and housing above it considered more successful than, say, the collection where there's no housing and there's some empty stores?
I think that each piece of Friendship Heights has its own kind of successes and challenges. I think one of the great things about Whole Foods is that it's a place where a lot of people come together and are able to use that space. For example, we would table a lot outside of the Whole Foods because we knew there we'd be able to catch a lot of people, both those who lived in the area as well as those who maybe were coming in to shop or work and grabbing lunch. So I wouldn't say that one area is more successful than the other because it's all about kind of what you're looking for. Some people like being in an area that has wider sidewalks and maybe slightly less commercial or a little less dense. So it really depends on the criteria that you're applying.
Got it.
You talked about urban amenities, and those were part of some of the things you heard in the workshop. What did you hear anything about new parks, or did you hear anybody comment about Geico and redevelopment and parks there?
Absolutely.
Okay.
One of the sites I mentioned that at that workshop, we looked at 3 individual sites for more specific direction. One of those was the Geico site. We wanted to make sure that we heard from as many people as possible kind of what they are seeing and what they think makes sense for that site. And that opportunity is in the online visioning as well. If anybody would like to give us specific feedback on that site as well as the others. But yes, we're hearing about open space and parks and all sorts of, there are big A amenities, libraries and fire stations and kind of, but there are also smaller A, looking for community gathering places and, different types of restaurants or retail. So we're really looking at both.
The council's action on the affordable housing, I forget the name for it, that just got passed.
Yes, all right. Yeah.
How is that influencing the desire for more below market housing, affordable housing? How does that get blended into your output of the visioning session? Do you basically say that a lot of that will be going as a part of development approvals for commercial properties that want to redevelop? Is that some of the output that you'll potentially include?
Sure, so I will start, and if you want to jump in, feel free. So housing now, as you all know, there's a housing shortage in the county as a whole. So as a whole, we are looking at ways to both provide a variety of types of housing in addition to kind of that additional density that might be needed in certain places. As you may or may not know, we have the MPDU program, the moderately priced dwelling unit, which provides additional affordable units within a development. We will be carrying over the percentage, I believe at 15% into a new development that occurs within Friendship Heights, within the plan area. But we also are looking at other opportunities that allow for additional density or additional variety of housing. As you know, the plan cannot on its own make something happen or appear on a property. So what we try to do is try and use that vision to kind of prioritize some of those elements for like affordable housing. Is there anything you wanted to add?
Yeah, so to drill down a little bit, so I think Larissa hit the high level right on. So in terms of the affordable housing now, the only properties in Friendship Heights that qualify, the only property is the parking lot around the Saks site. So it's R60 on Wisconsin Avenue. So that goes into effect November 1st. That's part of the zoning ordinance, and it can be applied on applicable parcels from then. I think as Larissa pointed out, as the sector plan moves forward, there's certainly a desire for more housing, but more affordable housing. There's the minimum there. I think there may be some other opportunities. So I think we'll be looking at ways to encourage more affordable housing, whether that's specifically workforce housing as housing now, or whether it's MPDUs, maybe a higher percentage or whatever. All of that will be developed as we move forward with the recommendations. But housing now is in place on the 1st and will be sort of, essentially a parallel.
So what we'll be wanting to do is engage with Chevy Chase Land about the Saks parking development early, so that they know what our interests are in terms of that area. Because that's going to happen. What else?
If I could just
Yes.
Clarify one thing and then also take the great opening that Elsa just made about our new ad hoc committee. We do have the members of our new ad hoc committee in attendance that we can introduce to the community. I'll leave it to our board chair if she'd like to do that. But I also just wanted to confirm there were 3 specific sites that you said that were discussed in the visioning exercises. You mentioned that Geico was one, and what were the other 2?
5500 Friendship Boulevard and Saks. And kind of everything on that side of Wisconsin Avenue. So everything that Chevy Chase Lane. Got it.
Great, thanks.
And all 3 of those sites are available in the online visioning. So feel free to give us specific feedback about one or all.
Just to clarify for everyone that's here and for any that are watching online, when you had mentioned before about sites being outside of the village's specific boundaries, of course, Saks Fifth Avenue is actually within the village's municipal boundaries.
Yeah, that's ours. So we have 2 board liaisons here. We have David Winstead and Linda Willard. And then if you're part of our new committee, will you stand up? And thank you for your service. Well, I'm sorry, I don't have everybody's name on the top
Yeah,
of
but
my order sheet. So
yes, I'll just introduce Jonathan Halperin, who is the chair of our new ad hoc committee,
thank you.
and directly looks out onto the Friendship Heights sector plan area. We'll just say that. And also Bill Van Horn, resident on the west side, and I want to make sure I pronounce your last name correctly, Ms. DeGiovanni. Oh, perfect. Is our third member of our committee, Allison DeGiovanni.
And I would just note we've already been communicating with Mr. Halperin and the committee so that we can have some more focused dialogue with them.
Perfect. Thank you. Good.
I think that's it. This was really meant to be exactly as this an update. We do have lots of information also available on our website that gives you direct links to the sector plan website as well as contact information. We will also upload the slides that were presented this evening to the homepage of our website so that our residents can access it there as well.
Awesome. So, yes, did you have a question? Can you come to the, thanks.
Hi, I'm Meredith Wellington. I live over on Lenox Street, so I'm a concerned resident. Well, this was excellent to hear this update on the report. The kind of questions I have is when the visioning report comes out as to all the events that were held, will you also list there how many people were at each event or how many people participated? because I think that's very important, because to the extent I read the urban study, it didn't seem like there were a lot of high responses to that. And then I see that in the village questionnaire, only 54 people. So that's something I would like to understand. Then my other question goes to the housing goal. I saw again in the, well, this wasn't in the study, this was in the board decision that set the boundaries, where it was said that the county-wide goal for housing is 31,000 units, and that everybody's going to have to sort of take part in that. Well, my question is, that was in 2019, excuse me, 2019, and a lot has happened since then. We've had the pandemic, we've had now the layoffs in the federal workforce. There are a lot of changes that, and also we've got the new pipeline study, and the final version's coming out this Thursday, and I haven't seen it yet, but we also know now that quite a few housing projects are moving forward through the pipeline that could provide thousands of houses, or homes, residences, not apartments, a variety, multifamily. So I'd like to understand if that's still going to be the goal. And then my last question is, there's all this is moving ahead. It's part of its project. And so my question is, Geico is really the only place for real amenities. I mean, that's where 2 baseball fields were recommended for children, not 90 foot. But, and so that was recommended in the last sector plan, but because Geico never went forward, it didn't have it. And that's 26 acres. So my question is, are you going to make a recommendation for all 26 acres of the Geico property? And those are my questions.
I will do my best to answer them all. If I miss one, please remind me and let me know. So, yes, we will absolutely be sharing how many people attended each of our events or responded to any kind of online or different type of form of engagement. Absolutely. Housing goals. I would say at this stage in the plan, we are envisioning. We do not have recommendations that are drafted. We don't get to that stage until we've heard from all of the feedback. As we present preliminary recommendations, there'll be additional information on the specific housing recommendations that the plan will be making. And I will also note that we have our team that is working on this plan is an interdisciplinary staff team that includes individuals who are experts and focused on housing, both as a whole and policy, but have been taking a close look at this area as well. So they'll be heavily involved in developing those recommendations, as well as discussing how those recommendations meet kind of larger county goals, but also in a way that is appropriate for this area. Geico, yes, we will be making recommendations for the entirety of the site. But as I mentioned, we don't have them yet because we are still in the visioning stage, but they are coming and we'll be excited to share them.
Could I potentially just ask?
Yes.
I'm sorry, 2 clarifying questions to those 2 responses. So, Liz, could you maybe summarize a little bit about the planning board meeting that's happening on October 23rd in regard to the Geico site and what that specifically is focused on? And I also have a follow-up question regarding the target.
Sure. So I'm going to start the Geico answer, and then I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Heisen-McCoy. There is both a regulatory process and a master plan process that are running on parallel tracks. So in the master plan, we are looking at that long range 20-year vision for what could happen on the site and what's appropriate. In terms of what is happening later this month in terms of the planning board,
Thank you. So there is an existing approval on the Geico site now. The planning board approved it in 1999. And over the years, planning board action and county council action has extended the validity to really next June. Geico is moving to downtown Bethesda and is looking for a development partner to redevelop the Geico site. And so they have requested a new, this is a little bit in the weeds, but a new validity period for just the residential portion. So their 99 approval, as Ms. Wellington pointed out, had baseball fields and office buildings and multifamily and townhouses. They are, with this amendment, removing the office component and requesting a new validity period, which sort of keeps the shorthand, sort of keeps the plan alive, so that if they have a development partner, the development partner is starting with an approved plan. As you pointed out, the plan is over 25 years old, does not meet current standards on a variety of fronts: stormwater, environment, transportation. And so we have conditioned the staff recommendation of approval that whoever moves forward with the project, they will have to get another approval before they can build anything, that they will have to update the preliminary plan to bring it up to date. So this is sort of a placeholder action that's happening on the 23rd. It will not entitle anybody to do anything other than come back to the planning board with more applications.
And it's being brought by the Geico ownership.
It is being brought by Geico ownership. Geico is the applicant.
After there's been, I think, some rumors about where it's, so I think it's helpful to have that.
It's amazing the names that come up.
Yeah.
Yes, that Geico has not announced a development partner, but they have given us to understand that they are in that process.
And just to clarify one other piece of Ms. Wellington's question, she had asked about the overarching housing target that has come down by the planning board as the mandate to planning staff as the framework that you all should be using. Is that target still in play? Is it possible that that could be amended as it relates? I understand the response about still appropriateness for the sector plan. I think that might have been a slightly different question than what Ms. Wellington was asking about, which is whether or not that actual target is still the operating orders that all of the planning staff is working under for the respective sector plans.
So the planning department and the county council have been having discussions for a while on housing targets. I think those are ongoing. And so, while those numbers, those numbers are sort of a separate conversation. We don't have, there isn't a goal for the Friendship Heights sector plan must have X number of units. I think what we've seen in Friendship Heights, and even in though there's been a lot of new units in Bethesda, is that just because the zoning is there, it doesn't mean people will take advantage of it. There's been zoning in Friendship Heights for many years and not much new development. So I think we're focusing more on, as Larissa said, sort of that longer term community vision, that 20, 25-year vision. I think we've heard from a lot of residents that it is a priority for them, in addition to amenities, parks and open space, more housing, more affordable housing to support those, to support the retail and businesses in Friendship Heights. So that's really where we're focusing.
We have a question back there.
So the 26-acre site has a preliminary plan approval. So it's a preliminary plan of subdivision, which is where the planning board finds that public facilities are adequate to support new development, and a lot of the agencies, the county agencies, use that approval to make sure that all of their standards are being met. In 1999, that approval included office, and the adequate public facilities looks at transportation impact, and the transportation impact is based on the particular mix of land use. So offices generate so much traffic, etc. So for the purpose of this new, so it's not an extension because they don't qualify for an extension, for this new validity period, they are pulling out the they're pulling out the commercial piece. So it's essentially, if the planning board approves the preliminary plan amendment on the 23rd, the validity period will be for 500 units. And I think it's 200 multifamily and 300 townhomes, or the other way around. But there will not be, commercial uses will not be part of that approval. Now, staff recognizes that, what made sense in 99 is not going to make sense in 2025. And as we said, this plan, is really looking out to 2045. That land use mix may or may not make sense in that period. So I think we're going to be looking sort of more flexibly. We will be making recommendations for all of Geico. We'll be making recommendations for all of the properties in the plan area. Those could be leaving the zoning that's on the ground. Those could be recommending new zoning. But this is, I think the best way to think of it is this is sort of a placeholder, so that when the development partner comes in, they will have to come in with a new preliminary plan and a new site plan that will essentially be what they intend to build.
Yes.
It does. The validity period attaches to the plan, which attaches to the site. Yeah.
Oh, great.
We
Thank
could talk more about preliminary plan technical stuff.
you. I think we're going to be talking a lot
We'll see.
in the future. So yeah, thank you. And thank you to our committee, ad hoc committee. Really appreciate everybody's help and time tonight. No more questions? Okay. So the next thing on the agenda. Let everybody. So the next thing, as advertised, is a discussion where we have no action to take except give a sense of the board on this. We came into a problem with a sign ordinance. Somebody wanted a sign up for longer for an event than our ordinance allows. And we had conversations and realized that we could definitely allow these signs to be up longer for an event. But in the course of that, our trustee attorney looked at our sign ordinance and realized that we really need to update the whole thing, because since it was done in 2008 or 9, we've had Supreme Court decisions that affect things. We need to really take a look at what we're doing with signs and make sure we're doing the right thing. But we do want to give staff a sense of what we think about, right? What happened last month was somebody put up a sign for an event that's happened this weekend. It's coming this weekend. And we had to tell them, no, our ordinance says you can only have the sign up 7 days in advance, which in retrospect seemed a little silly. It was from, 2008, when everybody was all up in arms about not having signs around. So I'm feeling a little more lenient about that and wanted to give staff a direction that said 2 weeks or a month for an event sign. But we're going to have a conversation, board conversation.
And then in the midst of thinking about, how far in advance should someone be allowed to post an event sign being a particular type of sign, then then it was discovered their policy is a little outdated. And are we allowed to restrict the timing of these signs? Do we know that it's a productive discussion to talk about time frame at some point, not necessarily resolving anything tonight, of course. Can we restrict, can we maintain some regulation of signs at all, or is it?
Yes,
Yeah.
I
Okay.
can answer that one, yes.
Yes.
Writing a good sign ordinance is one of the most difficult things to do, because the Supreme Court weighs in on that very heavily, has weighed in on it, both with commercial and non-commercial signs, since your code was last reviewed. So I can see that it really does require pretty extensive review. Uh, You do have power under the state zoning law to do some sign regulation because normally it's a zoning power and the county would have it. But you are authorized to do that so long as you, when you adopt a law, you send it to the county, and it has to be more restrictive than the county's law. County's law, one of the evaluation points for signs is what they say and whether your regulation depends on the content of the sign. Montgomery County has completely gotten out of the regulating based on anything having to do with what kind of sign it is. And so they just regulate time, placement, size, no matter what it is. So,
Time means duration.
yes, duration, placement, and size. And they classify them as temporary, permanent, and there are various restrictions that apply, but they don't get into content at all. The more difficult thing is when you do get into content, and most places do want to do that, because there are certain kinds of signs that you would rather see and others that you would not. It breaks down between commercial and not commercial, and a number of other restrictions. So it would be useful to hear what you would like to do, and then we can see what we can do, legally speaking, to give effect to that.
Yeah, so my understanding is that most people have been pretty happy with our sign policy. Occasionally, somebody puts up a sign earlier than they're allowed under current policy. And we've said, take it down, and they have. In this case, we said, put it in your window so it's not in the yard, and then it doesn't disobey our, we just kind of hedged it. But I think because we're going through this, we should probably stand down, and Shane and I had discussed that in terms of enforcement until we have a new policy, because we don't know that we're enforcing it properly.
Right. The other area that has been, we've seen repeated violations have been for events that are taking place outside of the village, whereas our code limits signs to events taking place at the location at which the sign is erected. So you can put a yard sale sign up in your yard. You couldn't advertise a nonprofit that you're affiliated with as having an event at a location in DC at your yard. And so that's the other area where we have seen frequent violations, in addition to the violations related to duration prior to the event exceeding what the code allows.
Right, but we don't even know if we're allowed to make that restriction, so.
Correct, but I think what Sue Ellen would need in order to even determine whether or not some of these changes are permissible pursuant to statute would be to get a sense of the board of the types of changes you'd like to see made to the code, and she can then figure out if indeed those are permissible. A copy of the full Chapter 12, the Village's Signs Ordinance, was included in your briefing packets. As noted, Section 12.7 is a section that basically is the non-commercial signs generally, allows that signs may be erected provided that they are non-commercial in nature. That would basically exclude anything that's commercial. Commercial is very clearly defined. It would also exclude real estate signs because those are dealt with separately. It would also exclude event signs because those are dealt with separately. The provisions that we currently have for non-commercial signs essentially allow you to place them. You don't need a permit. There is no limitation on duration. There are just limitations as to how large those signs can be and how close they can be to public improvements, meaning sidewalks, roadways, etc. Real estate sign classification. We tend to see frequent violations of that, principally because realtors tend to go and order signs to be placed in yards before they have come into the office to get the real estate sign. That is the only type of permit that we currently require that you pay a fee for. The fee is $5 per sign. And then real estate agents can also come in separately to request directional signs for open houses. There's no fee for that. The section that we were looking at potentially making some alterations to would be subsection C of 12.7, the temporary event sign section. Again, the limit currently is that signs may be erected no earlier than 7 days prior to the commencement of an event, which is a relatively short time frame to engage neighbors to want to come to an event. And then there is a limitation that signs may only be erected at the private property at which the temporary event is scheduled to occur. Otherwise, that subsection, the limitations are all generally consistent with the requirements for non-commercial signs in regard to where they can be placed, as in distance from a public improvement, and in regard to the size of the sign as well. So those are essentially the principal sections of the area that signs are permitted. There's a long list of signs that we do not allow. That's something that Sue Ellen would need to take a look at more closely. And then there's also a separate section where we have dealt with the temporary directional signs and pet containment signs. The issue arose that these are pet fences, electronic pet fences. The companies that sell that technology typically will give you or sell to you little warning signs, or typically to alert neighbors when a dog is in the front yard. We have allowed people to put up only our signs that we provide to residents for free to alert passersby to the existence of an electronic pet containment system, because the signs that were given out by the companies were classified as commercial signs. So that was our workaround to dealing with that issue.
Yeah. So you're going to do the big overhaul. We're going to give a sense to staff tonight about two things, I think. Do we want to allow the signs to be longer, so 2 weeks or a month? And do we want to allow signs that are not specific to that home, but elsewhere? So I'm feeling kind of lenient about this, but I'd love to hear what you guys' thoughts are.
Well, I think you commented that, Shane, I guess you can give evidence to this, that people have been pretty happy with this overall, right? There haven't been many complaints. You've had this recent one, correct?
I would say
That the
altogether,
7
yes,
day-
the complaints have been
That
low.
the 7 days allowances, most people have been fine with it.
Correct.
So just from my perspective, sure, go 10 days maybe, but I would not make it 2 weeks for a month. I just think it's an eyesore. It's probably unnecessary. I would think if you're serious about an event, you're probably online with people that you want to have come to it.
Well, I do
So-
think that online has overtaken signs in
Yeah.
many instances.
So that's my perspective on it. It's just that I wouldn't lengthen it that much. Maybe you've had one complaint, maybe 10 days shows a little bit more leniency, but I just don't see the rationale for having an event sign in the yard for 2 weeks.
The complaints that we've received have definitely been more so on the side of, and I should rephrase this, I wouldn't classify them as complaints. I would say that when we have had to approach a resident about a sign in their yard not being in compliance with the code, it has typically been more so for the fact that signs are for events taking place outside of the village, far more than the fact that the sign is up too far in advance. And I would say the response we receive from residents has been, readily compliant. They go and they pull the sign, but there's clearly a sense that people would not assume that they cannot put a sign in their yard that advertises their kids' school's open house or a nonprofit organization's fundraiser. I think that has certainly been the root of most concern. The most recent event, yes, there was also the question about the reasonableness of the 7-day limitation, but the overwhelming concern that we've dealt with has been more so on the events happening outside the village.
And keeping in mind that there's no time restriction on signs that are express a sentiment, political sentiment, or support for a cause. So if you're putting a sign up for an event that's 2 weeks in the future, that would be in violation. But if you're putting a sign up that says support charity XYZ, no event, that could be
Yeah.
no time limitation, right? So
Correct.
that's kind of and you see some of those around,
Mhm.
plenty of the high schools now, they post signs when a kid is either starting a senior year or graduating. And, I've probably been guilty of having one of those in my yard for longer than it needed to be there a while back. But so I think there's that also relative, if we're thinking of where do you get clutter that we wish we could minimize a little bit. I don't know that it's the event sign.
Right.
The
It's
difference
stuff
of
that
an
we're
extra
not
week
gonna
on the
be-
event sign, I don't see as a big a deal versus just kind of trying to tamp down the proliferation of long time signs that eventually kind of fall into disrepair.
Is there an exemption for nonprofits, like the church, because this is saying property yards, like All Saints is having its event on Saturday, and they put that sign up. I think they put it up in advance, but I think that's helpful to have it on their property. But are they treated differently?
Yeah, so there is a separate category currently for any flag, banner, emblem, or insignia of a political or religious organization or a professional, collegiate, or scholastic institution displayed on a flagpole. And then there is another dealing with houses of worship as well. Sorry, bear with me 1 sec. Any sign erected, placed, or maintained by a church, synagogue, or other place of worship is exempt, provided such sign meets the following conditions. It has to do with lighting, number of signs per frontage, and the size of the signs.
Okay, right, good, because sometimes they need, their parishioners or whoever need to know, like, massive, yeah. So that makes
Yeah.
And so part of what Sue Ellen will be looking at as well is that can that provision remain as drafted, because it is specific to who's putting up the sign, which again is something we'll just need to evaluate.
So back to the time period. David's weighing in for 10 days. Do you have a thought?
I am new to this. 7 days seems very short.
Mhm.
And if you were encouraging your neighbors to come to something, a 7-day window just seems a little tight. Depending upon where you're traveling in the village, maybe you don't go down that street for a week. You maybe want to have a weekend. When this came up, it struck me as a very short time. I have not heard complaints for longer sign periods, but I do have to say it seemed pretty long.
So are you weighing in for 2 weeks?
2 weeks would be fine.
I agree.
I'm going for 3 weeks, 21
Oh.
days. 21 days. I think there's a related issue of, in the village and then degrees of out of the village. Because, for example, right now, with the exception of, we don't have a school in this village. You can't advertise a school event in Chevy Chase Village under this regulation, whether it's Westbrook or Somerset or Chevy Chase Elementary School or Silver Creek or Rosemary Hills. So that's where I would also look to find some definition to allow organizations that have some legitimate tie to the community, and the question is just how to define that, but just to allow organizations some opportunity to post signs even if they're not in the village proper.
That's the part that's going to be tricky, because the Supreme Court is saying you can't
Distinguish.
favor
Right.
this
and-
versus that. It's
Well,
everybody gets
Yeah,
to.
it gets a little complicated depending on what you want to do, but I'm assuming that in allowing temporary event signs, you're not intending to allow commercial events, just non-commercial, correct?
Right, because we still have the commercial restriction.
Well,
But
it's
until
not
you
Currently.
until you go over this and tell us what we
yeah,
can do.
it's not extremely clear in looking at this because it just says temporary event signs.
Right.
And it doesn't distinguish.
And
But-
would a fundraiser for a school that's a public school or a private nonprofit school be considered commercial?
Generally, no.
Okay.
And you can make your definition to fit, and you can make distinctions for event signs between commercial and non-commercial. And so that gives you some leeway there. you still have to show that there's a government-related purpose in adopting the law, but you don't have to show as much of an interest when it comes to commercial signs.
Okay, well, we're all in favor for lengthening. We're just figuring out. So we've got 10, 14, 21.
14.
You're at 14? Okay, so I think that the 14s kind of have it.
Okay. And then,
You can
Again,
always put the.
understanding that this is somewhat to be determined based upon village council's research. Sounds like there's also general agreement to allow signage for events taking place outside of the village.
Yeah, because there's no school in the village. I mean, the school is outside. So, yes, thank you. Thanks, everybody, for this. We look forward to you teasing it all out. The next thing is very important, the holiday party caterer. I'm glad we have a quorum that we can vote on this. So we've been happy with Balducci's. I'm so glad that you're recommending them again, but.
Yes, and we'll just say briefly, as noted in the staff report that Jennifer Young put together, thank you. We are actually not recommending the lowest bidder because the contractor that we're recommending came in at just about $400 or so higher than the lowest bidder, but provided much greater quantities of selections for the holiday party in comparison, including an additional protein, additional side, additional hot appetizer. So looking at the detailed catering proposal, it was clear that we were getting far more bang for our buck for only an additional $400 or so. And as noted by Ms. Leonard, this is the caterer that we have used now for several years for the village's holiday party. And we've been very, very happy with them. And the community has given us a lot of really positive feedback about them as well. A copy of the proposed menu is on the screen, and this year's event will be held on December the 10th. Thank you. And
Okay.
happy to entertain any questions that you may have for me or for Jennifer.
Oh, you had me at venue. Does anyone have a proposal?
I move to authorize the village manager to enter into a contract for services with Acme Markets, Inc., doing business as Balducci's, to cater the annual village holiday party in an amount not to exceed $15,150.
Second.
All in favor? Great. Okay, so next is we have our police report.
Good evening, all.
Hello.
So September was a fairly quiet month. We had a theft from the church at All Saints. Somebody came through on a Sunday, went through, grabbed somebody's purse, an employee's purse that was left in one of the kids' rooms. So we are actually working with them. We had a little visit with the preschool kids a couple weeks ago. Read a story. They got to look at the police cars, and we scheduled a visit. We're trying to schedule a visit later on to go through their security plan, because the issue they're having is on Sundays, some of the older patrons don't want to walk around all the way in the front. They want to go in through the rear entrance, take the elevator up, which puts them in the kids area. So we plan to take a look at the security survey with them, try to figure out a reasonable way to start to cordon an area off and secure where everybody else is, and anybody needs the elevator for church on Sundays, can't get into the rest of the church area. So we're working on that with that. We had one theft of airbags from the unit block of Quincy Street. And other than that, knock on wood, we've been fairly quiet as far as thefts go. Administratively,
Chief, can I ask you a question?
of course,
Theft of airbags, have we seen that before?
it's going around the county. The county has seen a rise in it. We got hit once. Again, airbags come and go, depending on the price of things and what they're going for online, and what the thieves can get from. They get hot and they get cold, kind of like the stock market. Right? So they just,
Was this car locked?
yeah, they broke the window to get into it.
Wow.
So And outside of
Know what I'd
using
do
a
with an
steering wheel
airbag.
lock, there's not much you can do to prevent a theft from an airbag.
Thank
So
you for your
take
report.
everything I said about thefts from auto, throw it out the window when it comes in.
Okay. Thank you.
Administratively, just run through a couple things real
Okay.
quick. All their GPS units are in the vehicles, except for the 2 new ones. And if you go outside, I don't know, it might not be out there or not, but the new car with new striping is out there. We're get there, once the 2 vehicles are here, we'll have the GPS units put in those. Everyone should have a login, all the dispatchers, they can track what they need to track for PW and for the police vehicles. Still working on building the geofencing so that we can keep track of true patrol hours in each zone. And that's more of a uploading maps and arduous task that we're still working on. We scheduled some senior self-defense classes from January 7th through February 25th, working in conjunction with Chevy Chase at Home. So it'll be a combination of lecture and talking about how to prevent fraud and things like that, prescription fraud and keep your medicine safe, things like that, with some very basic altered physical techniques for people who may be mobility impaired. So those, once I clear things with Chevy Chase at Home, we'll get registration up and get the flyers out. Additionally, the women's self-defense classes have been scheduled for February 25th through April 8th in the evening. And again, I'll be getting that registration up and available soon. And that's it.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Manager's report.
Yes, just a couple of things. I'm sure board members have seen that the second round of options for the boundary study for Woodward High School came out, and no changes are proposed for the village, so very happy to see that. We'll still continue to track it. There will be a third round of options, and just in case if we're somehow scooped back into things, we'll be paying attention just to make sure of that. But as of right now, very happy with that outcome. Our current school assignments will remain if these options carry through. Second thing I wanted to just mention is, as noted in my written report, SRA 2502, which is the subdivision regulation that impacts the More Housing Now ZTA that was approved in the summer, will go before the county council tomorrow, likely to be adopted. The good news is whether it is accepted as is currently amended from the Planning, Housing, and Parks Committee, or if it's subject to some further tweaks. There was a potential error in the staff's report that was issued yesterday. Either way, this would exempt consolidation of lots amongst the eligible lots that we have along Connecticut and Wisconsin Avenue, because our lots exceed the square footage caps that have been proposed. So that is a very good outcome, I think, for the village and in preserving the character of our residential lots along both roadways. One piece, however, of disappointing news, our civil engineer met on site this afternoon, with the roadway contractor that did the Primrose Street project, and confirmed that indeed the speed hump closest to Brookville Road does not meet the minimum specifications that we have adopted. So that speed hump will need to be replaced now for the third time. I'm working with our civil engineer to determine whether or not we want to have our on-call street maintenance contractor take on that work at this point, rather than leaving it in the hands of the contractor that did that street. Overall, we have been happy with other work that the contractor DNF Construction has done on that block, but as it relates to the speed hump issue, rather than running the risk that it's not done correctly for the third time, I'm leaning toward having our street maintenance contractor, Stanley Concrete, do that. So more to report on that, but that information just received this afternoon, that indeed it was confirmed to not be correct. The issue has to do with the angle of the speed hump as it achieves its maximum height. If you create that angle too subtly, you can get a max height of 3 inches, but it won't really have the impactful difference that you want for drivers going over the speed hump. Whereas if you have a shorter distance in that rise, it really forces you to slow down. Given that that is one of our most highly trafficked streets on the east side, we want the speed humps that are there to have their intended effect. And so it's important that we achieve that by having it put in correctly. But that will create a one-day disturbance for those residents as that speed hump is removed and put back in. So I'll have more information for the board as we get that confirmed and scheduled. So nothing else to add.
Nothing else to add. You know what that means.
They're scary. I move to adjourn the meeting.
All in favor? Thank you, everybody.
Thank
Great to
you.
see you.